Well, happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome aboard. Jim Coyle with you, as always, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, alongside Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I haven't been here in like 2 weeks, so it feels great to be back on the show. How's it going?
Going well. All kinds of stuff happening. Obviously, last night's Indiana-Wisconsin game is wow. All I can say about that, we'll get to that, of course. Indiana with a 22-point lead, looking like they are going to finally vanquish that ugly streak of 18 consecutive losses, which is now 19 up there. But Wisconsin comes back. Unbelievable. We're going to talk about that. Louisville's in a spiral. We talked about this yesterday a little bit with Rick Bozich, but now they do not have an AD. Vince Tyra has left for Florida State, and now the president, Neely Bendapudi, is off to Penn State. She's only been there for like a year, I think. So right now, Louisville has no AD or president, and this is in the middle of the basketball season, in the middle of the school year, for no less. I don't know that I've ever heard of that happening before.
Yeah, I'm sure
school being rudderless in the middle of the school year.
Right. I'm sure it's happened before at some point, but to see two high-ranking staff officials gone in the middle of the year is not something very common. It's not usually presidents don't change jobs until the end of the academic year, just because you have to go through so much. All that kind of stuff. So it's very unique. Usually there's a process for all that stuff. And so to see Louisville be without any leadership in the middle of the academic year, to be, midway through, well, not midway through, in the early stages of the basketball season, that's a unique situation. It's going to be interesting. And this always then leads to, when you hire a new president, when you hire a new AD, it always is somewhat concerning for your head coaches, because this is when you always want to see, those kind of people want to see their guys, quote unquote, in those roles. So, puts a little pressure on the Louisville head coaches to win immediately too. So there's going to be a lot happening here in the next, probably 8 to 10 months in Louisville.
Yeah, it's going to be. Louisville's an ACC school, so they have to maintain. That's a serious deal. The ACC is in some flux too. Their football programs are absolutely abysmal. Yeah. They are abysmal as a conference on the football side now. And I know that Clemson will be back because they just didn't have a Trevor Lawrence. You lose a Trevor Lawrence, brother, you lose a lot. But they'll be back. But that's about it. You got Miami now that's making another goofy crap show of things with the way they did things with Mario Cristobal. How embarrassing was that?
Oh, yeah. You're talking about basically they kept Manny Diaz around until they got their security blanket. He was basically just there in case they didn't get another head coach, which to me, it's not that Manny Diaz did a fantastic job at Miami. I think everybody would probably agree he wasn't going to lead the program back to the Orange Bowl or get him into the ACC championship game, but he wasn't 2-10 every year. They were consistently in bowl games. So for them to treat him like that, and then from what I read, I don't know if this is true or substantiated or not, but there was a tweet out there that said the media was not permitted to ask Mario Cristobal how he was hired or what the hiring process was like. I don't understand that. What are you trying to hide from in that situation? And like I said, maybe that was something taken out of context when I read it, but it was just people deserve better than that, unless you're talking about some sort of egregious situation with a head coach. If you're just wanting to move on, cut ties and go get the guy that you want, as opposed to dragging some guy along, maybe having him stick around a year when you really don't want him. It's just, that's not fair to the players. It's not fair to the staff. It's not fair to the head coach. But this is the world that college football has become now, with these, $100 million contracts, 10-year deals, no buyouts. It's I hate to use the phrase, but it's really become the wild, wild west. And Miami's become, that was prime example of what it's become.
Well, and that's the term "the Wild Wild West" is a phrase that has been used early and often. I've used it myself, and that's exactly what it is. But this is nothing. We've seen coaches do this before.
Yeah,
the same thing in reverse. But now these coaches' salaries are just freaking ridiculous. You're giving Mel Tucker $95 million because he had one great season based off of bringing in 1,000 portal players, and now he's on par with Nick Saban. Now he's getting Jimbo Fisher money. Are you kidding me? Where was he coaching before he came to Michigan State? I forget.
Colorado.
Okay. He didn't. I'm sorry. He did. It's not like he won the Big Ten. It's not like he didn't even have a Tom Allen year. You know, Tom Allen had, I'm talking about the year before last with Indiana,
right,
when they rolled through everybody. If he'd have had that kind of year, it still wouldn't have made sense. And he didn't have that kind of year. He didn't beat Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State, Michigan State, and Michigan. He didn't beat all three of those teams. And it's a decent season, but that's it. A lot of people had decent seasons, but just because you can recruit the portal, to me doesn't it's just nuts the way they can throw that kind of money around, especially on the heels. We're coming out of this COVID lockdown where all these people were let go from universities and sports were cut and all of this, but yet all of a sudden every coach is getting a $95 million damn contract. Craziness beyond belief.
That's the thing that I think is I don't know if it's frustrating, it's eye-opening to a lot of people, is the fact that just 12 months ago, we had athletic directors, presidents tell us how they didn't have any money. They had to cut sports. They had to reduce scholarships. They had to, renegotiate contracts, and staff members needed to take pay cuts. And now you're throwing, an ungodly amount of money at anyone who will take it. Mel Tucker, obviously 10-2. I mean, he's going to continue to recruit through the transfer portal. To me, that's basically going to be his method to success at Michigan State. So to get to 10 wins is an incredible accomplishment. But at the same time, in the two previous seasons, he was 5-7 at Colorado. He was 2-5 last year at Michigan State. So you're taking a major gamble. I don't know what you do, because LSU was primed to throw a lot of money at him as well. So you either lose your head coach and you risk having to find another one, or you pay him an unwarranted amount of money.
Monopoly money?
He's not the only one either. James Franklin got a really nice contract extension, and Penn State is 8-10 in their last 18 Big Ten games over the last two seasons. So he hasn't had the program up competing at a Big Ten championship level the last couple of years. We'll see. Tom Allen took a pay cut. Scott Frost took a pay cut. I think it really goes to show, I have a ton of respect now for Jim Harbaugh for his decision to any bonus money he's receiving now. And remember, he also took a pay cut. This season to donate
pay cut
to donate all of his money that he was earning in bonuses and giving that back to the athletic department to basically reimburse for these cut pays and reduced salaries. Give a ton of credit to him, because this was a guy on the hot seat. Some people wanted him out of Michigan. He's doing the right things.
A lot of people wanted him out last year, and now he is the king of the Big Ten. I mean, he has Michigan sitting on top right now, and very, very few people, including me, saw that coming. I thought that Ohio State was still the machine, even though they had that loss to Oregon early. They do that often. But they were rolling, man. They were just looking wicked. That offense was just unstoppable. But I guess we didn't give the Michigan defense near enough credit. And offensively, they pretty damn good too. They put 42 points on Ohio State?
Yeah, 42-27. I mean, that was a team that was well-rounded. They were good on both sides of the ball. We didn't give them I didn't give them any credit coming into this season. I thought they would be somewhere like 7-5 or 8-4, another loss to Ohio State. And maybe they're looking for a new head coach, but he assembled this team really well. He got some key guys to come back for this season. They opened up I think what was most interesting is the way they changed defensive schemes under Mike McDonald from Don Brown really helped them. I think that they opened up the playbook. They got the ball in their hands of their playmakers. It wasn't nearly as conservative as it has been. And they just ran the football extremely well. The interesting thing is Indiana was one of the 3 teams that held Michigan under 30 points this season. So if you want to hang your hat on any point of the season, that's one thing you can do, because it was Indiana, Penn State, and I can't remember who the third team was. But, I mean, that should give some folks some hope, and it should be a message to athletic departments, in my opinion, that you don't necessarily have to move on. If the guy's proven to be successful in the past, look at Tom Allen. Just because you have a bad year here or there, and a bad year at Michigan is different from a bad year at Indiana, but you can turn it around. You can get things back on the right track. Jim Harbaugh is a great example of that, and I think we have a few head coaches. Primarily, we'll see what happens with Nebraska and Scott Frost. If they get this thing to pop this next season, maybe it's a message to some of these other athletic departments that we don't have to fire our guy after 3 bad seasons or after 3 seasons. We can wait it out a little bit. Now, maybe that's the message in the Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12. It's probably not going to change in the SEC, to be quite honest with you, because they want to win and they want to win now.
Changes are continuing to come in college football. We'll talk about that, about Indiana later on. I'm shocked that there has not been more changes. That does not mean that there isn't going to be, I guess, but it's after the early signing date comes and goes, which is in about 7 days, I think. Coaches are out on the road recruiting right now. They're trying to maintain the recruits that they have, which that's got to be really difficult for a team like Indiana right now. After the season you had where all expectations were just destroyed, you've seen people in the portal, bottom, Miles. Let's see, who was the receiver? Wasn't Miles Marshall? Did he?
You might be right. I'd have to look. I can't remember.
Jacoby Hewitt went into the portal. But that's not you're gonna lose guys that maybe surprise you every year because for whatever reason, they may not have gotten the playing time. They may want to go someplace else. Somebody, so you can't always, unless you have a mass exodus, people in the portal is never going to surprise me. Michael Penix absolutely did not surprise me. I wonder, where's Michael Penix going to land? I'm sure someone will take a chance on him, but it's going to be like an FIU or FAU or a Division I team. It's just not necessarily a P5 team. And if it is, it's going to be a low-level P5 team because 4 straight years of season-ending injuries, man. There's no reason to not expect a 5th.
Well, I think that was my initial thought too, is he's probably going to look, or he may not be looking at a group of 5, but that is probably going to be where he ends up. In my opinion, where he needs to look is someplace that has a really good offensive line, because he's kind of taken a butt kicking the past couple of years behind Indiana's offensive line, and especially this past season when he was playing. So I don't know that anybody's going to take a risk at the Power 5 level on a guy who's been injured, a guy who had, even when he was playing healthy last year, Jim, he wasn't great. He wasn't very accurate. He couldn't get the ball to his receivers. I think a group of 5 is going to be the best opportunity for him, but I've been wrong before. It's going to be interesting to see where he lands, but I think that was probably the right decision on his part, because I think it's a time for Indiana to go to that next quarterback. It's time for them to start moving towards the future. And I think Donovan McCulley is going to be that guy, especially with Josh Hoover decommitting and then verbally committing to TCU. They need
within 10 minutes.
Yeah, they need to have that sort of youth movement. They don't have the type of depth in that room that they once did. even just last year, before last year when we were talking like 4 or 5 different quarterbacks in that room. Now they don't have that.
We've got plenty more to get to. We'll talk about that more. We'll talk about Indiana, Wisconsin more. Kyle Neddenriep is going to join us next. No, Matt Taylor's joining us next. My bad. From the Colts. How about them? They're still on a roll. They are looking at trying to make the playoffs. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat right after this. You all don't hear music because I'm having to produce the show today.
So we're boring.
Not only boring, but I've got to do all of that. And
The Colts don't play this week, do they?
watch the clock. No, they're on a bye because that reminds me, saw Carson Wentz, got him a nice buck.
Oh, he was out hunting?
Yep. On his bye week. And how about that's a big win by the Colts, man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe it was last week I'm thinking about. Who did they beat last week?
Who, the Colts?
Yep.
They beat last week they beat the Texans. And
That
the week
was a big win.
The week before, they lost to Tampa Bay, but should have won that game.
Yep. They've got how many shouldas do they have this year? They should have beat
They should have
beat the Tennessee. They should have beat the Ravens.
Yep. That's probably those two, and then Tampa Bay are probably the two biggest. They had a chance to beat the Rams, but I don't remember how that game went down. They had to kind of come from behind in that one. So, oh no, it was tied with 7 minutes left. So they had four games that they coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
So even if you win 2 of those, they're what, 9-4?
Yep. All right, we have got about 30 seconds. Oh, Matt Taylor's supposed to be joining us. Let me text him, make sure he got it. Okay, here we're back in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Welcome back, everybody. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday as we're heading into the sports weekend, but still have a lot that's going on right now. Last night in college basketball, you had plenty going on. Of course, Indiana playing. Losing for the 19th straight time at Wisconsin. We'll talk more about that later. We've already spoken about it. But let's see. Also yesterday in the Big Ten, you had the Buckeyes playing Towson at home, 85-74, so not exactly a blowout there. Michigan State beat the Minnesota Gophers 75-67 at Minnesota. Minnesota was 7-0 at that point.
How about, just to chime in really quick, how about the job? I don't know that Minnesota's played a ton of really great teams, but the fact that Ben Johnson had them at 7-0 and they were competitive against a pretty good Michigan State team, that's not easy to do in your first season. So I give a ton of credit to him because he's with
Absolutely.
All the guys they lost.
I was shocked.
All the guys they lost to the transfer portal, to graduation after last season, just really impressed with what he's done early. Now, we'll see what happens when we get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule, but early on, he's done outstanding for his first couple games as a head coach.
Penn State wins 74-54. They beat Wagner, the Seahawks. I thought didn't Michigan play last night?
Michigan
Or was that
played
the
2
night
nights
before?
ago against Nebraska. Didn't they play Tuesday?
That was the
Monday
night
or Tuesday?
before. Yeah, I've got everything's running together now. But they just absolutely destroyed a Nebraska team that gave Indiana a battle at home. So that kind of gives you an indication. Indiana has just got to. They're not that quite there yet. But I'll tell you, if they could put that first half into the second half, they could play with anybody in the country. Anybody in the country. And that's the thing. They're not able to keep things together right now.
I would just say this. If they could combine the first half and give like 50% better in the second half, or 50% of what they produced in that first half in the second half, they'll be competitive with anybody. To have such a stark drop-off between the first 20 minutes and the second we were talking about it off air, that's unprecedented to go from that hot to that cold in that amount of time.
One thing that is funny, let's see. Arizona is now ranked 11th and 8-0 after firing Sean Miller. Indiana is what are they? 7-3?
7-2
right now.
7-2, right?
Lost to Syracuse. That was the first loss. Yeah. 7-2. So, look at those two records combined after the Miller brothers were extracted from those two places. It's just a little something of note. Number 20, Florida bounces back from that unbelievable loss that they had. And they destroyed the North Florida Ospreys 85-55. But who did they lose to?
They got beat by Texas Southern, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, and that's not, remember, Texas Southern, Mike Davis is formerly coached there before he went to Detroit, and he got them into the NCAA tournament like 5 years in a row. So you got to give Mike Davis credit for kind of rejuvenating that program. Last year, that's the team that knocked off Purdue in the tournament.
That was North
right?
Texas. North Texas.
North Texas. Okay. I keep wanting to give them credit for that.
Well, I'll give them some credit because in the past, I did a sort of a Big Ten tour with my friend who still lives up there. And we hit up a Michigan game and a Michigan State game in the same day. And Texas Southern, if I remember correctly, the day we went to play, they played Michigan State. Texas Southern hadn't won a game, or they had won one game, and they went into East Lansing and they beat Michigan State. So it's not, and then Michigan State, I think that year ended up going to either the Sweet 16 or the Final Four. So you can't panic when those kind of things happen. Sometimes you just lay a dud. Sometimes all your guys are just not into it. So I wouldn't read too much into that, but it is always shocking to see a lower level team that hasn't won a game beat a top 20 team, especially one that was playing so well like Florida.
West Virginia, they're at home, but they knocked off the number 15 UConn Huskies 56-53. Not a shock there. That's a tough place to play, man. That's a tough game. Huggy Bear.
I just love that nickname.
Oh, especially because he's become so big. He's just gigantic. He just wears the tents. He just he's just throwing on a tent. It's like a parka. You just throw on the parka with the insignia on it. He's gotten gigantic. But yeah, I love that. I love his teams. I love watching him. I wish he was in the Big Ten, actually. He'd be fun. The Big Ten needs some characters. He's wasted away in that conference. The SEC football has characters. The Big Ten football, you've got a couple of great rivalries, but not great characters. I think PJ Fleck is just phony. I'll be honest with you. I think he's a shtick, and it's just a shtick. And I know part of that you gotta, at some point, if you're not a Nick Saban, you need something. But I think that PJ Fleck is a lot of shtick.
Well, I mean, you can make that argument. You can also make that argument for Tom Allen if you wanted to.
I absolutely agree. And if I wasn't around Tom Allen, I would understand most people doing that. But having been around him, he's naturally caffeinated. Let me tell you.
Well, that's true. And I think having talked to PJ Fleck a few times, I think that's the case. The thing that people have to remember, I don't mind if people don't like PJ Fleck. I understand why people don't. I like him. But the message that those guys are sending, Tom Allen, PJ Fleck, those aren't intended for 35, 40-year-old guys like you and me. Those are intended for 18 to 22-year-old kids. And that's really all that matters in their families. If they buy in, and clearly they have, Indiana doesn't win 8 games and then the following year only lose 1 game to Ohio State if those kids aren't bought in. Minnesota doesn't beat Wisconsin twice in the last 4 years and go 11-2 if those kids aren't bought in. So it's working. I understand why people don't like either head coach, to be honest with you, because there's that feeling of like used car salesman, and this is, like you said, this is the shtick, this is the, all the abbreviations and everything. I don't mind it, but those kids are all that matters. So, and both programs, I think, are bought in. Even though Indiana was not good this year, I still think the kids are bought in. It just, you had some circumstances that didn't go your way. So, it works. I think there's some characters in the Big Ten, at least on the rivalry front, with Mel Tucker and Jim Harbaugh going at it. Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day. Kirk Ferentz is getting a little bit feistier now that he's getting a little bit older. James Franklin threw a tirade.
Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh definitely are kind of it for the Big Ten East. Mel Tucker's not really. He just sits there. James Franklin he's always honest. Like at the Big Ten pressers, love his honesty, but he's usually not controversial. So you going down the line, Greg Schiano, never really done anything. I can't even remember the coach's name at Maryland.
Mike Loxley. He hasn't, he's very quiet, goes along very quietly. So no characters there. You got Scott Frost, and if Purdue can step up, now I could see a hell of a rivalry between Purdue and Nebraska, but between those two coaches, those two young, just get after it kind of coaches. Yeah.
If those two teams could rise up, that would be a hell of a rivalry. Then if you throw in Iowa, but Kirk Ferentz is not, but you could throw in PJ because of his shtick stuff. He would jump in that. He would jump in that fray. Where the other guys wouldn't jump in, they would naturally be put in. That's the difference. I think PJ Fleck would jump into the fray. But part of that is trying to sell his product. I understand and I agree. And that's what Tom Allen has to do. He's got a product that he has to sell.
Because you're not recruiting Minnesota and Indiana if you're not doing that, in my opinion.
Well, you got to sell it just to more to kids. You got to sell this product to now. How difficult is it going to be to sell Indiana football to fans? They had them on the edge of their seat this past season. They were ready. The popcorn was being had, the beers being chugged, the seats were sold. It was ready to go. And boy, I forget who it was. I think it was Daryl Thomas that one time, Bob Knight. I hate to go this route, but it was in the book. He told Daryl Thomas he should go out to midcourt and do his business so he can feel like he accomplished something out there today. It's a harder place today in sports, and it's going to get harder. How the hell is Indiana going to compete when you've got Texas offering $50,000 to every scholarship lineman? You think that's not going to stop? There's no way that Indiana can compete at those levels anymore. And now, it's been tough enough as it is. So now they've got to do that. Now they got to compete against that. You think Ohio State's not going to be doing that stuff? You just had Quinn Ewers, who was there and gone. And the reason he left, Quinn Ewers, who had $1 million NIL deal, leaves Ohio State because he's getting a better deal, actually. And he was behind too many people.
Right.
He was not going to see the playing time, and now he's going to get a better offer. Is he going to he's going to balance the best offer from Texas Tech or Texas? And if Texas is going to pay $50,000 per offensive lineman, what in the hell are they going to pay for a top quarterback?
Yeah, but those offensive linemen, that has to go. That money is set up for a charity. So they're not, I don't know what percentage they're getting, but a majority of that,
that's not going to any of the players?
It's going to the players, but they donate it to charitable causes of their choosing. So it's a little bit different. But
I think that they have a charitable cause set up as a potential front.
Well, I'm not in that, but I'm just telling you what the language said. We're talking about the nitty gritty of college football, and we know that stuff goes on. We know that there's backdoor deals and $100 handshakes and all that stuff that's happening. You can't pinpoint anybody in particular, but it happens. The thing that's going to be interesting to me about this with the NIL is, let's say somebody like a Quinn Ewers, and I don't want to put this on him, but let's say he doesn't turn out to be the kind of quarterback that everybody expects. And there are companies that, invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in this kid, basically. I think eventually you're going to see this sort of stuff slow down until players are established at certain schools. You're not going to see, not very often are you going to see a recruit who is going to get money no matter where he goes. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to start to see look at what happened at Miami. Some booster or company owner gave that entire program, whatever the money was, $600,000, $500,000 for every scholarship player. And Miami was 7-5. That's not good business. So I think you're going to start to see this slow down. Right now, there's still no regulations. There's still no understanding of what's happening in this. So it looks crazy, but I think it is going to slow down. I think Indiana will be able to compete, but Indiana wasn't competing with the likes of Texas and teams in the SEC anyway in terms of recruiting. This is where it's Tom Allen. You have to locate the guys that are going to fit your culture, the guys who are the diamonds in the rough. Iowa's made a killing doing that. And who's to say that it can't happen at Indiana? I think it still can. Does it get a little bit more difficult? Yeah, maybe. But you're talking about not recruiting probably the 5-star guys. That's basically what this boils down to. But you're not going to get those guys very often anyway.
All right, I was reading this from Darren Rovell out of the Action Network yesterday. He says, what a genius idea. Have a slush fund that masquerades as a charity to stunt blowback, but never have pressure by any company because the return on investment won't be tracked. The first initiative is the Pancake Factory, which will give $50,000 to every Texas offensive lineman on scholarship. With the announcement, every lineman, none of whom are likely to be marketable at all, who is thinking about going to Texas now knows that $50,000 is coming through that program. If it's never talked about directly, that's an inducement. They're getting this money, and they are inducing people to come to the university, which breaks both the NCAA rules and the Texas law, which is apparently set up. But nobody cares about either. Texas is not going to stop Texas from doing that. No. And the NCAA, to me, has just washed their hands of doing about anything. They're like, all right. And I kind of understand it because they fought it and fought it and fought it. There's no way to police this.
No.
I've said this forever. I said it before it happened. How the hell are you going to police this? It's not possible. It is simply not possible because now you've got fake charities being set up. You're going to track that for every school? Hell no.
Well, they didn't even do it with LSU when a booster defunded a children's hospital. I can't remember what it was, but it was some sort of charity, defunded it by like $100,000 or something in that regard and gave it to a lineman's father or parents or something along those lines. Like, you had that stuff happening before this was even. So they've done a terrible job in the first place. That's why I don't think it really changes that much because the NCAA for certain programs, they've let it slide. So what's the difference? Now you can just make it a public announcement rather than doing the backdoor deals. But in my opinion, the money's still going to be the same. And by the way, you're probably still going to have people going the backdoor route and saying, you know what? We can't publicly announce this, but here's what we're going to do for you. I don't think it's going to be all that different. It's just now these companies are going to publicly announce it as opposed to, keep it on the down low because like Tennessee, they don't have to put it in a McDonald's bag anymore.
Keep it on the down low. Hey, we got to take another break. We're back with more. Chris Denari is going to join us. Kyle Neddenriep, plenty more. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this. Oh, man. There you go. Put the clock over here. Let's see. How bad did Syracuse, lose to Villanova? 67-53. Not terrible, but.
Well, it was pretty close down the final couple minutes there. I think Villanova just pulled away.
It's what Indiana should have done. Oh my God, how do you do what they did last night?
Indiana?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Kyle Neddenriep's up next, right?
I don't know. Sure.
I hope people are getting these stupid links.
Excuse me.
Actually, he was supposed to be in the last segment. No, this segment. What is today? Cool. Purdue plays tonight.
Yes, at Rutgers.
Merrimack plays tonight. I think Kyle should be joining us next, though.
Okay.
Dude, the kid that's going to Purdue, you need to track him.
What kid?
Brady Allen.
Allen. I've heard he's really good. I haven't seen him play.
He led his he won a state championship.
I heard, yeah, I did hear that.
They were down. I think they got down. What's that?
I didn't say anything.
And it's just another example of how 1 year ago, Indiana, in the last 2 years, Indiana owned the state in football recruiting, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Between those two schools, at least. And all of a sudden, it's flopped.
Yep.
Indiana does not have a quarterback per coming in. They got this kid and got him in state. I knew they were going to lose Josh Hoover, and I'm still sick about it. I just think that kid's going to be something special.
Yeah.
I just really like him. He's a great kid, but he's a great athlete.
Right.
And watching him play, I'm like, God, just love watching him throw the ball.
Well, yeah, that was a huge hit to their recruiting class.
And I believe him when he said the OC change didn't have much to do with it, because he'd have been better off with virtually anybody.
Right.
And I think he just saw the shit direction that Indiana's going in, not knowing what the hell with the offensive line.
Well, and who did the coaching change at TCU probably made a difference too, because they went from Gary Patterson. Who did they hire?
Sonny Dykes.
Was it Sonny Dykes? That's what I thought.
When did that happen?
A couple weeks ago, I think.
Okay, so they must have gotten to the – wow. They may have gotten to the deal late then.
Well, he was at SMU, right? Sonny Dykes.
Oh, shit, there's a – what time did we go to break?
I don't know.
We'll come back. Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on the Thursday. Joined now by the great Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star. Kyle, how are you doing, sir?
Good, guys. How are you doing?
Fine. I'm sitting here with Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition, and I was talking about it's funny how Indiana kind of had they had gotten up and owned recruiting in this state between Purdue and Indiana over the last couple of years, but now, buddy, that has flip-flopped. And not only that, Purdue landing an absolute great prospect in Brady Allen, who led his teams to a state championship since the last time we spoke. Led his team. They were behind, come from behind win. But, man, the numbers he's been putting up, and right to the very end, he looks like that's the kind of quarterback that you want to have.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's all of 6'5", and looks like he can make all the throws. And I only had a chance to see him, other than only on film until the semi-state game against Tri-West, and saw him there. And I was walking the sideline that day in person, and it's sort of one of those things where you understand it's 3A football, but a quarterback when you see one, I think, in some aspect, and he, the way he can throw, over the middle, he can throw deep, he can take off and run a little bit. He's not a runner by the definition of a dual threat quarterback, I think, necessarily, but he can, he's athletic enough to get away from people when he needs to. And then the state championship game, he did have 3 interceptions, but some of that was Brebeuf and what they did to him. And then there was a deflected pass that was sort of a, fluky, but, and then he comes back and throws 5 touchdown passes and they win the game. And, so I know that's, I'm sure tough for IU fans to watch that, but for Purdue, man, that's a really good in-state get. And, he's going to get to campus here in about a month and start working, towards, I'm sure, trying to play as soon as he can. Who knows how soon that'll be necessarily, but I have a hard time. I haven't covered high school football for a long time. To me, quarterback is the hardest to project to the college level, because I've seen so many guys who I think gosh, he's going to be there's no way he can miss at the next level, or look what he did in high school at the 6A level, and it's just so hard to project, because you're going into different systems. You're sometimes your offensive coordinator changes, so there's all these factors. Everything has to kind of fit together perfectly. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you Brady Allen's going to be the next coming of, Johnny Unitas, but I think he's a really good player, and I think he's probably going somewhere where he can make a difference, I would say, and relatively quickly, if not next year, I think, pretty quickly down the road. So, I don't know. I'm humbled enough by thinking certain guys are going to be great, and they're not. But everything would lead you to think Brady Allen's going to have a pretty good college career. I'll say that.
Yeah,
well,
he's one of the. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, and the fact that you look at Jeff Brom, who was able to turn Aiden O'Connell, who was going to be a Division III quarterback. He was a walk-on, and he might turn into an NFL draft pick. And certainly that's not it's not the only case that's happened, but it's incredibly rare. So I think that there's also some faith that, even though he plays maybe at not the 5A, 6A level in the state of Indiana, there's still he has all the qualities that you want to see in a quarterback, and the fact that Jeff Brom has that track record of turning maybe not the most elite guys into really good, prolific passers.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dustin. I think that's, and that's maybe why you would think that this will work, and I know that, gosh, I mean, it's amazing. His numbers are amazing, and they do play a high level of 3A football in that area of the state, probably the best of anywhere. So he's
got all those Evansville teams down there.
Well, Evansville, you got Heritage Hills is always good. Southridge is always good. They play Evansville Memorial on their schedule. So they've got, it's not like he's, playing Podunk Central every game. So, but he set the state record for touchdowns is what I'm getting at. And
wow.
I know some people are, as we talk about this Mr. Football race, it's kind of like a political campaign sometimes where you're mudslinging the other guy. And I get so tired of that, but it's like, hey man, he even though he didn't play 6A, he played a good level of football and so I do think, Dustin's right. I mean, he's going to a place where Jeff Brom has a track record of being able to, develop quarterbacks. And like I said, I wouldn't expect, him to go in and light the world on fire or even start, as a freshman. But I do think he's got the ability and the system's right for him to go in and really be a good player in the future. So, I would, I've seen guys kind of get hurt by expectations and people expecting too much. And then it's like, well, then you feel like you're a failure in some aspects. I've seen, guys that happened to a lot of people before, especially you basically can only play one quarterback, and that's the hard thing too. It's like if a guy is on a hot streak and now you have the transfer portal adding into it and, your time runs out relatively quickly. So, if you don't sort of get yourself in position to play right away, then you're maybe 2 years left and you still haven't done it, and then you're looking to go somewhere else. So, but I think the future lines up for him to be an impact player.
Yeah, he's humble. He just doesn't try to play outside of himself. From what I've seen and heard, I mean, I love the kid. He just seems like a really, really a good player, and one that wants to learn and get better. He's a good one. Indiana lost one that I think was even better than that, and Josh Hoover from Texas. I know you don't cover him, but man, oh man, they had a decommitment from Josh Hoover, 6A quarterback in Texas, had thrown for over 9,000 yards, and just watching him on film, golly, he's just, you can tell he's beyond his years. He understands the reads of the defense and just calm as can be, and a great athlete. I've talked about this so much. We've had him on the show before, and he was talking about during COVID, he had nothing to do, but so they built a little chipping putt outside the back, and he would practice chipping and putting. And he went out and played golf for the first time and shot an 82, which just tells me what a great athlete he is. But he just kind of reminded me of Drew Brees, not to stay on the Purdue kind of thing, but I think he was going to be a great one, and Indiana lost that. Now Donovan McCulley is maybe the quarterback of the future. They've got Jack Tuttle, but Donovan McCulley, someone you're very familiar with, didn't have a great time throwing the ball this year in his time filling in for Indiana. But is that something you think that he can fix?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect Donovan, to come in and be great right away either, and I don't think the plan was for him to play this year, obviously, and he was supposed to be a developmental track, and then you get thrown in the fire. That's kind of what I'm saying. People are like, well, I'm not saying you're saying that, Jim, but just people get down on you, and then it's like, all right, let's move on to the next thing. And Donovan, even at the high school level, was not a great passer to begin with. It took him some time to learn how to. I think we even talked about this when he was coming in. When he was a sophomore, there was it was pretty, yeah, as athletic as he was, and man, he could throw the ball deep, but it wasn't always accurate. It wasn't always the right reads. He's processing things at the 6A level though as a 15-year-old kid, and that's hard. I mean, that's really hard. Even as big and talented as he was, and he could take off run for 70 yards, but all those things that go into being a quarterback, even at that level, it took some time. And then by the time he was a junior and a senior, especially a senior, things really slowed down, and he just dominated a lot of teams. That season he looked like a man against boys in a lot of ways. But so I think I totally expected there to be ups and downs, and you'd see flashes and then flashes of what's going on, and I think that's all part of it, and also also what's around you, how much help are you getting, and I think at times there wasn't a whole lot for him either. So I he played more than I thought he would, because of situations and injuries and that sort of thing, and I think he showed flashes, and I think he showed things he has to improve on, but not at all surprised by the way, the ups and downs he had for a guy who's just coming in, fresh out of high school.
Kyle, I don't think that this is groundbreaking news or anything, but there's some preliminary discussions being had with the NCAA and among commissioners now that it sounds like they're really considering eliminating that early signing period, or at least getting it back to the way it was, 4 or 5 years ago, where you just had that one signing day or that one signing period in February. What have you seen covering some of these athletes that are going to, big time schools? What are some of the issues with that early signing period? Because right out of the gate, it seemed like it was maybe a good thing that kids could commit. They would be done with their recruitment, but obviously there's some negative sides to it. What do you think is the biggest issue with the early signing period right now?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I was reading about that yesterday. Some different outlets were writing about it, talking about it. I've heard some things even before that about, they need to get back to what it was before. And there still is that date is still there, but even almost immediately, I think the first year, I want to say Emil Ekiyor and Marquis Stepp, and I went to they signed early at Cathedral, Ekiyor to Alabama, and Stepp was going to USC at the time. He's at Nebraska now. Running back, but he those two guys, I remember that was that early. I think it was right before Christmas, and I remember writing about it. And kids really liked it. They could kind of, if they knew where they were going, get it over with. Get your thing signed, get it done. And I think from that perspective, I don't sense that the kids don't like it that way. I think the families, if you know where you're going, you might as well be able to sign that paper and get it in. But the problem arises too, I think, where you saw almost like, I want to say, gosh, 95% of the prospects were committed, or if not more, in that early period in December. And you can understand it because coaches want to get their recruiting class done, and then you maybe have a few kids you're still going after in the spring. You can kind of focus on or not the spring, but February, there's a handful who might wait. You can focus on transfers, getting your roster in place, and it kind of moves the whole calendar up. But the issues, I think, are more, less about the kids necessarily, but the circus of a coaching, that we've seen in the coaching changes. I mean, it's ramped up the calendar so much. You're seeing firings during the season. Yeah. Everything is just wild as far as that. And so that's been, and I get it too, because gosh, you want to get you have to get your recruiting class in place, be able to tell kids like, all right, here's our offensive coordinator, here's what we're doing. So the whole calendar gets ramped up. So that's not a good thing either, because it creates a wild, wild west even more so during the year. So I saw a couple things about, making it, maybe right after the national championship, you have a signing day, which would be mid-January or something like that. So, I could see that maybe happening, or, do you just go back to what it used to be? I don't know. I did like it. I liked for everything else I liked about it. And I think like anything else, I mean, you find things that end up being a bigger problem maybe than you anticipated on the front end. On the back end, it becomes problematic. And I think that's what we're kind of where we're at now, with the coaching circus and guys just moving around everywhere during the season. So, I think that's, the transfer portal has also done some of that, but I think it's more so just the coaching cycle.
Yeah, we were talking about Brady Allen earlier. Gibson Southern down 26-7 in the second quarter. That's a pretty nice comeback, especially for a state championship game.
Yeah, it was. Look, Brebeuf was, handling them. It kind of looked like it was headed towards a potential blowout, but knowing you have Brady Allen on your side and you never could feel out of it. And they played great. That even right before halftime kind of got themselves back in it. And then he really took over in the second half. And he's got a good team around him too. That Gibson Southern team was a lot of seniors, a lot of guys who'd played together for a long time. So congrats to them. That was a long time coming. They've been a team that hadn't won a state championship or really even been that far in the tournament. So, and cool, Nick Hart. I've known Nick for a while. He John Hart's his dad, who coached Evansville Rights, and then Warren Central, now at Brownsburg. And it was kind of funny watching John during the game. As just a normal dad, living and dying with each penalty call and bad thing that happened, and then being able to enjoy it with Nick at the end of the game was pretty neat to watch that father-son aspect of it.
Anything of the six tie list, anything jump out at you? Anything shocking? Anything big surprise?
No, I think, the biggest storyline was probably Center Grove and Cathedral both going back to back, and could they do it? And Cathedral was somewhat of a, with the great defense they had, not a foregone conclusion, but you would have been really surprised if they would have gotten beat. The Center Grove Westfield game I thought was really good. That was 27-21. Westfield's at the 11-yard line with 2 minutes to go, and Center Grove's defense had to make a play, and they did. And it was a sophomore who did, Owen Bright, with the interception there at the end. And so it was cool. I thought Center Grove didn't have a cakewalk. They had to go toe to toe with the team that was ready to play them and beat them. And they did. And to win that game, I think that maybe they didn't play their best game, but they made the play when they had to do it. And 28 wins in a row is nothing to sneeze at the 6A level. That's it hasn't been done at the back-to-back undefeated since at the biggest class level since Jeff George and Warren Central back in the 80s. So that's
a long time ago.
How hard that is to do.
What do you have coming up next, Kyle, from the Indy Star that people need to know about?
A lot of basketball. We had our Mr. Football Position Award winners were out this week, and then Mr. Football probably will be, it's probably still about another week or so away from us announcing that, but it'll be before Christmas. So,
who won the quarterback position award?
Brady Allen. So you've got the 9 position award winners. Curry's in that mix. You'll have Micah Hauser from Westfield, great two-way player. So you had some good names in there. So it'll be.
Do you think, does that put Brady Allen in the driver's seat? I know we talked about that earlier, but
it puts him along with Curry. I would say. I think Curry's still the guy who has the best chance maybe to beat him for it. But anytime you're a quarterback, I think you've just got more stats. And I think the fact that Allen won the state championship and was able to play on TV, probably more than anybody, that helped him because people don't watch Gibson Southern games on, they're not on NBC like Notre Dame. So you don't, and they're not a 6A team. So you don't see him play. But when you're on that stage, you get a chance to play in front of an audience that you don't normally have. So And I know from my own perspective, it's like, okay, wow, he's legit when you watch him play. I knew he was legit, but when you see him in person or even on TV, it's different than watching grainy film from Twitter or whatever that, it's just different. So, I think that, definitely put him in the limelight in a really positive way. And I think that'll help him.
Just like you, it's like Kyle Neddenriep, man. Too legit to quit, baby. Well, brother, I can't thank you enough. Look forward to doing it again next week. Make sure you give Kyle a follow at Kyle Neddenriep and at the Indy Star. Be a subscriber. I am, brother. I thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Dustin.
You bet. Kyle Neddenriep joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat. More coming to you, and we're back with it right after this. Well, the producers are going to hate me.
Why?
I think I went, well, on our last break, I think I went 2 minutes over in the break.
Oh.
It's hard to do all of this stuff at the
I'm
same
sure
time.
it is. I'm sure it is.
Like, I
You
need
gotta keep track of everything.
Yeah, I need
like
a
an egg
stopwatch.
timer.
Yep.
I'm going to get a bottle of water really quick.
9:35, 40. What? No, 9:33. Yeah, that's what I got to start doing.
What?
Using that
Egg
time,
timer?
using that timer.
Yeah.
I've got one on my phone that I can use, but so we have about 1 minute. Let's see. Chris Denari is next, not in this segment, but the next segment.
Gotcha.
All right, I'll have that. That is set for the next time.
All right.
I've already sent a note to the producer. You might want to look at this time. I think I went over 2 minutes.
Well, at least you knew what time it was.
He's like, noted. Ten seconds. Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you here on this Thursday. We are reaching toward the end of the week, getting ready for the weekend, but yet sports are going on all during the week. Speaking of basketball, Merrimack, Indiana's next opponent on Sunday, this Sunday, travels to Spokane from New York. They're in New York someplace, but they're traveling all the way to Spokane to play the number 5 Gonzaga Bulldogs, who just got beat again. They're 7-2 now. No, they didn't lose that game. They're still 7-2. Duke beat them and Alabama beat them. But Alabama was beaten by Iona. I keep beating on that drum. I love it. Who's coached by Rick Pitino. So there's that. Purdue tonight traveling to Rutgers, taking their 8-0 mark up there to take on 4-4 Rutgers. Iowa travels to Iowa State tonight. Those are just some top 25 matchups. Number 7, Texas, and number 23, Seton Hall going at it. Seton Hall, the home team there. Texas is a 1.5 point favorite in that game. That'd be interesting.
Seton Hall's been playing well.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an interesting mark, but okay, whatever. How about Detroit? Is that Detroit Mercy? I wonder. Detroit, are they the Titans? Remember the Titans, Detroit Mercy Titans?
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes there's so many different schools, I can't keep them all in line.
Yeah, they're 2-6 right now, man. They're not doing too well. Mike Davis's squad with his son, 3-point shooter on there. I'm just kind of look over any other games of note. Don't really see one. Although the funny thing on today's schedule, they have one score already because I'm assuming it happened after midnight. Hawaii. The Hawaii Rainbow Warriors beat the Hawaii Pacific Sharks 88-52.
All right. Well, I didn't even know there was a Hawaii Pacific. So
I did not either. I saw something the other day about Hawaii football. It's like, why don't they do better recruiting? And I wonder that too.
I've always wondered that.
Brother, I'm like, give me a scholarship to frickin' Hawaii, and I think I'm going to go spend 4 years in Hawaii, guys. But I understand if you're serious about a football career that's not where you'd want to go. But there's got to be enough mid-level guys that just say, dude, I'm going to go live in Hawaii for free for 4 or 5 years.
Well, here's one of my questions regarding that is because they're not a Power 5 school, what kind of recruiting budget do they have? Because you got to think those flights, all that's got to be a lot more expensive for Hawaii than it is for Alabama or Clemson and they don't have obviously the same sort of donors. So I think it must be difficult to recruit from a cash flow perspective. That would be my guess, but I mean, you wouldn't have to recruit me in person. You can just pick up the phone and call me, say, hey, you want to come to Hawaii, play football for 4 years? I would be on that plane immediately.
Some sports news going on while we talk. Ross pointing out that Vince Tyra just turned Florida State down to become their new AD. So
wow,
Louisville does indeed still have an athletics director. They just don't have a president now. So that makes things a little easier for them to keep things rolling along. Was that an attention getter for him? I don't know. They used to get that before with Tom Jurich. Everybody in the world wanted him. But there's that. Ross also asking, where's Caden Curry leaning? No answer to that, but I got to tell you, I'd be shocked if Indiana was in that picture. Although I know they're a finalist this past season. If I'm a recruit, I'm just going to be honest with you. If I'm a high-level recruit, this past season at Indiana gave me no reason to want to go here to be a part of it. I'm just being honest. If I am a recruit, I understand Josh Hoover. I understand what he did. Why did he look? They haven't made a change at offensive line, and offensive line was a horrific problem. So Josh Allen's like, well, why am I going to go up there where I can't get protected? I'm going to get killed. What's happening there? They got so much flux. Now they've got a new OC that is a lukewarm hire. That's not. But I'm surprised that the hire. I'll be honest with you. Maybe it's all he could get. But if you're going to make it, then you've got to make it a splash, I think. And I don't know that I can't judge on what he's going to be as an OC. We have to let him go through the year. But it's certainly, I keep calling it a very lukewarm hire.
It is. And he was at Maryland. And this is the part that concerns me about the offense for Indiana's future, Jim, is if you watch those Maryland teams in 2016, 2017, very explosive, but they had some elite level athletes. I mean, the way Maryland was recruiting back then, and some of the athletes they had on that roster, they were very explosive, but they were only explosive really against bad teams. They played well against Ohio State, but that was an Ohio State team that couldn't stop anybody. So I am curious to know what they're going to do in a league this season that was so good defensively. Look at Michigan. Look at Ohio State. Wasn't great, but they were better than at the end of the season that they were at the beginning. Rutgers plays pretty good defense. Obviously, Penn State played outstanding defense. The one thing I think that you are optimistic about in terms of Caden Curry and maybe whether he goes to IU or he doesn't is that you look at some of those teams that he's considered to be thinking about. Oregon just had a coaching change. Clemson has a defensive coordinator change. Ohio State has a defensive coordinator change. Indiana's staying the same right now. Alabama's
not only did Ohio State have a defensive coordinator change, they didn't just have a change. They got potentially the best defensive coordinator in college football.
They did. So that could make a difference, but it is still a change. So that's not depending on what Ryan Day does with that staff. Larry Johnson is really good at his job as a defensive line coach at Ohio State. So he's still there. That's still going to play a role in it, but there are still some changes. So the fact that Indiana is keeping Charlton Warren and most of their defensive staff appears to be intact, that might help a little bit nudge him in that direction. I don't know what he's thinking, so I wouldn't rule it out, but those coaching changes do make a big difference.
Ross says that everybody keeps saying IU doesn't have the budget for another buyout and hire. Well, there shouldn't be any buyouts really. Coordinators don't usually have buyouts hardly. I mean, some do, I guess. The top
they
ones,
do, but it's usually much less money.
Yeah, well, and remember, Tom Allen had to dig into his own contract, about $800,000 deep, $200,000 over the next couple of years to buy out Nick Sheridan, which was a smart move on his part. But yeah, you've got to do it. You've just got, if you're going to be serious about it, you have to do it. I'm sorry. Yeah. Kevin Wilson makes $1.2 million as an offensive coordinator. That probably doesn't do a lot.
I've said he's got the easiest job in Power 5 football.
And I know Indiana is not Ohio State, but if you want to compete with them, you've got to get as close as you can with them. And Indiana has put resources into football. They've raised salaries without question. I don't know. Salaries have not been a problem. It's hiring. It's bad hiring. You know, when they hired Nick Sheridan, that's where they screwed up. And I said it at the time because the position was so hot that you could have had anybody in the country. Well, now it's dead cold. And this is why you get a lukewarm hire. Who the hell wants to come? What's there to resurrect? It's not like there's a ton of talent coming in. And so
let me play devil's advocate to that just a little bit, because we've seen Kalen DeBoer come in, do well, get a head coaching job. Kane Womack.
Kalen DeBoer, yes.
But what I'm saying
it's got to be a Kalen DeBoer though.
The reason why I'm a little bit stunned that Walt Bell is the offensive coordinator, and again, maybe he's going to be the right guy. Maybe he gets this program back on track, at least on the offensive side. But my point is that you've seen what Tom Allen has now, a coaching tree that has 2 head coaches in it. If you come to Indiana and you do something well, that's going to set you up for not a Power 5 job, but it's going to set you up for a group of 5 head coaching opportunity. And so
I think if Kalen DeBoer had
better.
Stayed until now, well, he got that Power 5 job.
Right, but
that I think he would have gotten had he not gone to Fresno State. He would have went straight to a Power 5 job. Had he waited a little bit longer, had he been here last year, I think last year would have been his last season after they had that great year, and he would have been even more in demand. It happened to work up timing wise that the former head coach stepped down at Fresno State, who came back to replace Kalen DeBoer. I'm like, damn it, why didn't you just stay in a position?
Right.
And Indiana would be in so much better shape. Now, Kalen DeBoer would have probably left after last season. After that season where they were so good, he would have been in such demand. Even as an offensive coordinator, there may have been SEC teams calling up on him, just bigger programs.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that because he had not had a ton of experience, any experience, if I remember, at the Power 5 level running an offense. So he probably wasn't going to get a power. Like some of these guys are offensive or defensive coordinators for 5, 7, 10 years before they get a head coaching opportunity at the Power 5 level. Like, so the fact that he didn't have that kind of experience, I don't think he would have went straight from Indiana OC to Power 5. But still the fact that a lot of those guys, the goal is to be a head coach. And if you do well at Indiana, you transform that offense, people are going to notice. So you can get that springboard to a group of 5 job. And then, as we said, it sets Kalen DeBoer up. Now he's going to be coaching one of the premier programs in the Pac-12 and one that has the potential. I mean, they were in the college football playoff in 2017. They're regularly competing in the Pac-12 championship. So he got a good job. I think that's a great that sets the tone that you can be successful at Indiana. So that to me is why I was surprised at the Walt Bell hiring, because I thought you would have seen a more notable offensive coordinator or more notable previous head coach that would have been interested in that job to kind of, whether it was to springboard their career or bounce back. Maybe Walt Bell's that guy. It was just very underwhelming.
You can win anywhere. You can win absolutely anywhere. It takes the right coaching, period, end of story.
Right.
It's just, that's all there is to it. If you don't have the right coaching, you're not going to win. Show me a bad coach that wins all the time. It doesn't exist.
I won't name a coach, but I can think of one, but it's for other reasons.
Well, you got to name it. Come on.
Who did LSU just get rid of?
Oh,
I don't think he's a great coach. I think he's a good recruiter, but
he was a funky hire. That's a funky hire too. He
put all the pieces in place.
At the right time.
Yep, he put all the pieces in place. He got all the right.
They cheated.
That's why I'm saying I think that you can, or even Gene Chizik. Gene Chizik won a national championship at Auburn, and he was not good. He had Cam Newton. Les Miles at least had
other stuff.
He got in trouble, but he at least had a track record where he was successful those other years. I mean, look at Gene Chizik's record. Look at Ed Orgeron's overall record. Yeah, he had some solid teams at LSU, but look at his record at Ole Miss. I mean, I don't think he's a bad coach. I just think he's an average coach. So you can win. You just have to put all the pieces. You have to have everything around you working properly in order to overcome that.
I'm trying to think of the guy that went from Western Kentucky to South Florida to Florida State to Oregon.
Willie Taggart.
Yes, he's another one. What did Willie Taggart ever do?
He was successful at USF, right? Or was it USF or what? I think he was good at USF, and then he went to Oregon.
For how long? No,
I don't know.
He went to Florida State.
No, he went to Oregon first, and then he went to Florida.
I thought it was reverse.
No.
He was only at Oregon for what?
1 year.
One season?
Yep.
And did what there?
Correct.
And then went to Florida State, who is. So again, I ask, what has he ever done, really? He just keeps bouncing around, getting these great damn jobs at these big schools, piling up the money.
Hey, it's a great gig.
It is. How these guys,
Charlie Weiss,
up money, Archie Miller, Sean Miller.
Yep.
I mean, there are coaches after coaches that are piling up millions of dollars, and yeah, it blows me away. Especially in this, like I said earlier, in this state that we are in, schools give out money like we breathe. And I don't get it. Hey, we're late for a break, as always, with me producing by myself. Let's take one, but I got to check the clock so I don't. Perfect. I'm going to wait 10 seconds so it's right on. That way I don't have to worry about hitting it. But we'll be back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this. All right, let's see. Oh, I didn't use my timer, dang it.
Oh, Army Navy this weekend.
I got a buddy that I graduated high school with that played basketball at Navy with David Robinson. He's on the board of directors for the Jimmy V Foundation.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Need to get him on here one day. Nobody knows who he is, but
still,
he's good. He's good buddies with Dick Vitale. When I had Dick on, I mentioned him, and I said, "Hey, you know Carl?" Like, oh yeah, I was with Carl, and I'm like, it blows my mind. I'm like, it blows my mind. I'm like, I went to high school with this dude,
right?
And he was not a good basketball player. He was tall, 6'5", maybe 6'6", but he had a vertical of maybe 2.5. But I remember when semi-state at Terre Haute at the Hallman Center set the arena rebound record for like 26 rebounds.
Oh wow!
Against Washington and Chris Craig Noodles Neal, who played in the NBA, coach, and because Barkley, I hear Barkley bring his name up on TV all the time. I'm like, what? And I'm like, golly. So, and then when Carl was playing with Robinson at Navy against Kentucky in Rupp Arena, I should be talking about this on the air because I ran into Pat Graham a couple weeks ago. Pat Graham was on his visit to Kentucky that weekend and at that game.
Ah.
Trivia, baby. Stuff you never knew. Kentucky wanted him badly. Hey, we're almost back.
All right.
I'm glad I looked. Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Thursday. It is just an average Thursday, kind of brisk. I heard that word last night. That sounds about right. It's brisk out there. Welcome back, Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition, joining me now, waiting for Chris Denari to jump on. He is there right now. I didn't see him. My bad. Chris, how are you doing, sir? I missed you.
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Cannot complain. Are you staying busy?
I am. I think I lost you. I'm trying to. Do you still see me?
I do, absolutely. Well,
all right. I think my video cable somehow I moved my screen.
That's all right. Yeah. Well, we always hate not seeing the pretty face, but I guess that's what happens when you beat down a team like the Pacers did the Knicks 122-102. Big win for a team with all the discussion of rebuilding around them right now. That's got to be difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that all teams at some point in the NBA deal with. There's always
Chris having a little technical difficulty this morning. We'll get him back up and running there. Dustin, you're a big Pacers fan, not starting off the way they wanted to, and have them talking about rebuilding early in the season. That's not a good sign.
Well,
but it's something that the Atlanta Hawks did last
Yeah.
year very successfully late in the year.
Well, I just think that at some points this season, the biggest issue has been at times their effort. And I think that that's something that's not acceptable within the Pacers organization is you have to bring it every night. If you're going to play basketball in the state of Indiana, if you're going to play basketball for this franchise, people will accept if you're struggling, if you're not playing well. But the fact that Miami Heat game, they just didn't look like they were interested from start to finish. And I think that that's when a lot of the trade talks and the rebuilding and let's blow it up and, either Sabonis or Turner's going to be gone and we're going to look to trade Karis LeVert. Some of those conversations happened. And I think what was interesting was after the game last night, Rick Carlisle and some of the players, Sabonis and Turner even said, we had this conversation with basically the top four players. And, they confronted it. They didn't try to, do this Ben Simmons stuff where it's passive aggressive and we're going to try to trade you behind your back. This was a team that last night and really the past two nights, they gave incredible effort. They played extremely well. They played together. They brought energy. Like it looked like a team that they wanted to play together. And in the past, that hasn't been the case this season. That's why they're 10-16. So I think I heard some positive things. You can't take much away from two games, but I think that these past couple games, you've at least seen the energy there. This team, I still think they like playing together. They want to prove that they can win together. But also the front office, this is a business. The front office wants to win. Rick Carlisle wants to win. The fans want to win. And you have to do what you got to do in order to get wins. And if that means rebuilding for a couple seasons to make this a championship level contender, then you got to do it. But I think it was really positive to hear, and I'll get Chris's thoughts on this, was that nobody ran, like I was just saying, this wasn't a Ben Simmons situation. This isn't some of the things other organizations are dealing with. Rick Carlisle said, we had the conversation. It was open and honest. Domantas Sabonis said it after the game. Miles Turner talked about it after the game. The fact that they hit it head on and the way they've played the last two games, to me, indicates that this team still has some chemistry there. They want to win for the Pacers, but the front office also has to do what they have to do in order to make this a winning franchise.
Yeah, it's good that I'm back. I have no idea what happened. All of a sudden, my screen and my computer just crashed. No, you're spot on, Dustin. And I think this group would like to do this collectively and together. They feel like they've underachieved. They're 11-16. But if you look across the landscape of the Eastern Conference, when the night started last night, the Pacers are in 13th place, and they're 4 games out of the final 6th spot or the playoff spot. They're only 2 or 3 games out of the play-in. So I think this is a group that they've got to be collectively better. I'm sure that the noise that's out there becomes a little bit of a wake-up call. But I think before I got cut off is you're 27 games into the season. December is usually a time when all teams start assessing where they are. What do you want to be? What do you hope to be? What do you want to do in the future? So this is not unlike what happens each and every day or every year in the NBA. A story just came out, talking about that. Miles Turner, I thought one of the great comments that he made last night to James Boyd, who's the new beat writer for the Indianapolis Star. He came from Champaign, where he was the beat writer for Illinois football and basketball. And Miles said, hey, dude, you're the new guy here. My name's involved in trade rumors every year, every day. So Miles and Domas, all these guys understand that's what the NBA is about. It's a business. It's a business for them. It's a business for the team. But I can assure you that this group, they want to be here. They want to have success, and they've been frustrated. And so if all of this noise becomes a wake-up call, I think that can be a good thing, right? But you're right. I think, Dustin, to your point, these guys hit it head on. They got together. They said, hey, look, we've got to focus on what we can control, and that's playing and winning games. And again, what we've seen these last two nights, pretty dominant performances against both Washington and New York last night.
Well, and to me, Chris, the conversation isn't even so much about the talent, the skill. The Pacers have dealt with injuries. Obviously, not having T.J. Warren is a huge factor. They've got some other things going on, but there was a lot of uproar after that Miami game because it didn't even look like the players were interested. And at times this season, there have been instances where you're not going to get a team's best effort 82 games. I think that's unreasonable to ask for. Especially with some of these back-to-backs. But the effort they gave in that kind of game, and you pair that with the fact that at the time they then dropped to, 9-16, or to me, fans in this state will accept if the product isn't quite good enough, it's acceptable. But what you can't do, and Rick Carlisle even said this after the game last night, you can't, for lack of a better term, you can't half-ass your effort. And that's, I think, what I've been most impressed with these past two games is this team – They just brought so much energy, and we hadn't seen that in the last couple games before the Washington contest.
Yeah, I think there's a certain level of intensity, energy that you have to bring. And I say that about this group. This is a really good group of guys. And I say this in a positive way. It's not an overly energetic team. You can't fake it, right? I mean, the worst thing you can do is fake intensity and energy or your personality. This is a team that, if you look at Malcolm Brogdon, and I believe he plays hard and gives it his all every night, but he's like this, right? You can't tell on the floor a lot of times if the Pacers are winning or losing. And a lot of times that can be a good thing because you don't want to get, too amped up or too amped down. But I do think collectively there has to be an energy level or an intensity level that you go over the top a little bit. And that's where they missed TJ McConnell because McConnell came in and did that. But what we saw last night, Domantas Sabonis going on the floor. Now, that's something he regularly does. I mean, you don't have to worry about Domas. I just saw some emotion, and I guess that's the word I want to use. It's not even intensity, it's emotion. And show a little bit of that. Not fake, but real. And I think that's starting to come out. And I think you have to look internally within yourself to figure out, how do I let my emotion shine so that my teammates can react to it, the fans can react to it? Because I think in a sport, and especially in basketball, you can allow that positive emotion to really carry you. And so again, sometimes it's difficult when you have a lot of guys that are more like this. It just takes one or two guys to sort of bring that entire group together playing at a little bit higher level.
And you've been around this team for a while, obviously. I'm curious to know how much of that is compounded by the fact that this team played so many road games early in the season. I have to think that when things aren't going your way, you're constantly on the road, it feels like. Now you finally get a home stretch. Is this the time that they can kind of get some of that mojo back, some of that momentum, and maybe we start to see this more of the talent come out because you're not on an airplane every other day, basically?
Well, and I think the mistake that they made, though, too, Dustin, was that they came home and they just maybe assumed, hey, we're home now. Yeah. We're going to win. Well, you can't make that assumption because I believe I've done this for 16 years now. I believe that this is as balanced and there's as much parity in the NBA from top to bottom as we've seen. Now you can say, hey, Phoenix is 20-4 and Golden State is 21-4. But look, last night, Houston started 1-16. They had lost 15 straight. They're very young. They've won 7 straight games now and beat Brooklyn last night. 7-8 years ago when the Pacers were at the top of the Eastern Conference and they went to back-to-back Eastern Conference finals, I can assure you that there were 10 to 12 teams that you played. You did not worry about them. You knew going into the game you were going to beat them. Didn't matter how you played, you were going to win the game. That's not the case anymore. You can't do that. The Pacers went into Detroit. Detroit's a young and athletic team. If you're not ready to play, they'll beat you. Houston, as I just said, Oklahoma City, even though they've gotten beat by 73 by Memphis, I think they've had 4 or 5 comebacks down 15 in one game. So it's a different NBA game. I think there's a lot more talent across the board. That if you don't play with that emotion, if you just show up and say, hey, we're at home, we're going to win, that's not going to happen.
And going back to last night, I think one of the keys, and we'll talk a little bit about the game, but one of the keys, I thought Pacers did a good job of scoring when they got the ball close to the basket last night, when they got into the painted area. New York's a good team. I think they're much improved from what they were in previous seasons. Obviously, they made the playoffs last season. But what did you see last night from the performance, maybe from the basketball standpoint, that the Pacers did last night that they hadn't been doing in previous games?
Well, I think the last two games, the defense has created offense that's enabled them to get out to good, strong starts. The Monday win against Washington, they had 10 blocks and 10 steals. I thought they did a really good job with doing that again last night. I also think the ball movement has been crisper. The ball is not getting stuck. The other thing I would say is Rick Carlisle doesn't just preach ball movement. He preaches player movement. And I thought that, especially last night, guys that you don't normally see, moving without the basketball were getting open with cuts and getting to the rim. I do think the three-point shot is essential, and it's important in this day and age. But I think the Pacers have to focus more on paint points. And I think that's something that's been a real focal point in these last two games against Washington and New York, is make sure you're getting paint touches. And some of that is driving into the paint. And then when you kick it out, your three-point shooter is wide open. It's harder to contest a three-point shot when you have the defense scrambling. And I think the Pacers have done a better job this week of finding those three-point shooters. They are getting better three-point looks than they got last week because they weren't getting enough paint touches to create openings out on the perimeter.
Chris, I mentioned the Atlanta Hawks earlier as an example of someone who, although it was even later in the season, that decided to reboot things last year, and it turned out very well for them. Is that something that you could see happening for the Pacers with what they're trying to do?
Well, I mean, I think everybody's open to do that, but really the Hawks didn't really change people; they just changed coaches, right? They let go of Lloyd Pierce and elevated Nate McMillan, and that was the move that they made that was important. I think the one thing you have to be careful of is, as you do this, is I can look at teams that have constantly rebooted their team by going young, by trying to get draft picks. Sacramento's been out of the playoffs for 15 years. Minnesota's been in the playoffs, I think, one time in the last 14 years. I look at a team that rebooted a couple of years ago, was Phoenix. And they were building with young players, Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, but they added Chris Paul and they added Jay Crowder. And those two guys came in with playoff experience, a veteran presence, surrounded by their young players. So there's different ways you can do it. The Pacers are never going to do a full-on reboot like you're seeing in Oklahoma City or Orlando. I just don't think that can sustain itself economically with fans in the stands and those types of things. If you look back 10 or 12 years ago, my first 4 years, the Pacers were not very good. They drafted Paul George. They acquired free agents in David West and George Hill, and they had 3 really good years, 2 trips to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then Paul George broke his leg. So there are many different ways to do it. The Pacers have never had to bottom out. I don't think that's down the road what they are planning on doing, but they will look at opportunities to improve the roster and possibly shake it up. But we'll just have to wait and see. I think they had a great conversation, as Dustin said, with Kevin Pritchard and Rick Carlisle and the core group, and said, look, let's really try to get this team going. And what we've seen the last 2 nights has been very positive. Now we just have to see if they can sustain it for the next week or so and longer.
Absolutely. What else is on the horizon for you? How's it going? How's Quinn doing? How's the broadcast been? Been fun?
Yeah, they've been good. I think the biggest news that I'll share is starting January 2nd, we will be back out on the road. Most of the other teams in the league, but we played Washington the other night, and the NBC Sports Washington broadcasters are not yet on the road. I don't know what their situation is, but our first road trip will be January 2nd, and the 4th will be in New York and Cleveland. And then later in January, I think we have about a 10-day road trip out west. We'll be in LA, San Francisco, Phoenix, and New Orleans.
You need a bag boy or anything?
Yeah, well, I may. It's been 2 years since I've had to pack on the road, so this is going to be an eye-opening experience for me. I think my dogs are going to probably not enjoy it because my wife is a hairstylist and works a couple days a week, but very rarely do we have to crate our dogs. And that's going to be a little bit of a mindset change for Bailey and Walter. They're going to go, hey, what happened to being able to lay in the chair all the time?
They're like, man, I was digging this, man. Yeah, but if you need a concierge or whatever, I'm your guy, man.
Yeah.
Brother,
well, we're looking forward to it. Like I said, the good thing is we've been able to go to practice. We've got our spot on the floor, talk to the players and the coaches. So this is the final step, and will bring us back to, it's the new normal. I mean, there are still things that you can and can't do, but getting back on the road will be very positive. Calling the games from the arenas. I will say, though, our crew has been fantastic. I've done almost 70 games in the studio, dating back to July of 2020, and I couldn't ask for a better setup. So all those people that have worked behind the scenes to make our telecast as seamless as possible, we'll miss working with those people in the studio, but we at least get to work with them on all the home games at Gamebridge Fieldhouse.
Well, brother, looking forward to it. We've got a Gamebridge Fieldhouse situation coming up with the Crossroads Classic here soon on Saturday, the last Crossroads Classic to be played. Indiana taking on Notre Dame, and Purdue and Butler battling in that. So we'll be up there for that. But, man, I hope you have a great rest of your week and look forward to doing it again.
All right, we'll make sure we have all the computer problems solved next week.
Oh, good, brother. The great Chris
thanks,
Denari
guys.
joining us from Indiana Pacers. Cannot wait to talk to him again. We're back with more to wrap it up on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
Remember, we got 2 extra minutes.
Start your timer, baby. Well, actually, I just got to look up here at this clock, that the counter. So we'll come back at 1:45 on this, and we'll have about 11 minutes.
Okay.
Didn't get to talk as much about basketball as the people would like today, but we'll do more of that tomorrow. Alec will be on. Hit these comments.
You have Charlie on tomorrow?
No, Charlie's on Monday. He did the postgame show last night, though.
Okay. I'm surprised people want to talk about it after that.
Oh, everybody has to get it out.
That's true. Is Notre Dame any good?
No.
That should be a win, right? Notre Dame's not that good.
Well, yeah, it should have been a win, but so Syracuse should have been a win.
That's true.
Oklahoma, Republican Senator Bill Coleman of Ponca City, Oklahoma, proposed a bill on Tuesday that would rename the last 3 inches of westbound State Highway 325 Lincoln Riley Highway. I felt the state of Oklahoma needed an appropriate goodbye to this former head coach whose sudden departure left many in shock, including a team of young, dedicated college players, Coleman said in a news release. I found the tiniest section of our most desolate highway to pay tribute to Coach Riley's exit from the Oklahoma football and the state. This is only fitting as this is the last 3 inches one sees before leaving our great state heading west. Kind of fun.
Wow. That's pretty good.
Time. Less than a minute. Did you watch the basketball game?
I watched a little bit, but I didn't watch the whole thing.
First half or the second half?
I watched the last little bit.
They were up 22 points.
I was watching it on my game tracker, and then I didn't get to watch till the last little bit. So I did see that they were up by that much.
10 seconds. 5. Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you here on this Thursday. Been a fun day. Kyle Neddenriep joined us. Just finished up with Chris Denari from the Pacers. Dustin Schutte for Saturday Tradition. Man, the basketball game went exactly like everyone wanted it to go last night for 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
More like 17 minutes. And then the volcano erupted and hell kind of froze over. It was nuts. Dustin, in the first half, the starters, we talked about this earlier, 76%. And in the second half, those same starters shot 16%. 16%. They barely got shots off. Well, no, they got the same amount of shots off. They hit 4 in the second half from the starters. As a team, 22% in the second half. It's just, I don't understand how a team can just be that drastically bad. Now, Xavier Johnson took a lot of the fault for that. He was 1 of 10 in the second half, playing out of control, playing emotionally. I think he missed three out of his 4 field goals and free throws in the second half. Indiana shot 3 of 9 from the free throw line in the second half overall. Couldn't hit anything. Free throws are freaking mental. I mean, there's no excuse for not hitting the free throws. I mean, 7-31 from the field, there's no excuse for that either. But when you're at the free throw line, it was just this team has to learn how to win, man, how to shut people out. They have a couple of times they've gotten up and they just, I've heard Trace Jackson Davis talk about not putting their foot on the throws. And man, Wisconsin put their foot on Indiana's throat last night in that second half. Seriously.
Well, and I was going to say a couple things that stand out to you. I don't care what Wisconsin changes defensively. To have that kind of stark difference between the first half shooting and second half, to me, that comes down to mentality. And then, I don't know, this isn't going to come across well, and I don't mean to put the team down, but I still think this is a mentally weak team. They have they
are mentally soft. That's exactly what I saw last night in the second half when Wisconsin punched them in the face. They did not respond.
They've had trouble with that even in some of their wins. You think back to the Marshall game. You think back to Eastern Michigan and St. John's. They've let a lot of these big leads slip away and allow teams to hang around. I don't know. It's going to take them winning some of these games, hitting some clutch shots down the stretch to get their mind right. And if they can't do that, they're going to let a lot of these type of games slip away. Because you, at the very least, you should be knocking down your free throws. You go 3 of 9, and think about it. If you go 6 or 7 of 9, it's a 1-point game or 2-point game, and you're going to have a chance to win it at the end, or at least send it to overtime. So maybe you don't win it, but when you don't shoot that well in the second half, when you don't shoot your free throws, when you're shooting 33%, when your starters have gone from 76% to 16%. To me, that's all mental because you were just heating it up in the first half before that break. So I don't know what's going on. This team is obviously in a better state than it was. It plays better defensively, but they've got to figure out shooting because I don't even know what to say other than they're going to lose a lot of games if they can't shoot in the second half. Doesn't matter how well you shoot in the first half.
Exactly. I mean, they were just lighting it up even beyond their numbers, which had been good. Indiana's shooting numbers have been fine. And they were exquisite in the first half of this game. And, buddy, in the second half, they just fell apart. Charlie Miller was with us last night on the post-game show talking about it. And we'll have some clips from that tomorrow. couldn't have that today. I'm here producing by myself, but just the weakness. You've got guys going in different directions, like Xavier. He kind of lost his team mentality. You can't be. If you're putting up 10 shots and going 1 for 10 in the second half, and it was some of the shots were just not good shots. The shot selection, they're losing their control, their emotional control, and it's like Mike Woodson's kind of letting them do this in the NBA. You do. I mean, you got to let the game play out. I think in college, you're going to have to be a little bit more hands-on. I think maybe he's trying to give them the rope to hang themselves a little bit right now to learn. But I think at the same time, he's going to have to be a little more hands-on as they proceed in Big Ten play and start making changes a little quicker.
Well, and a lot of times, and sometimes you need this. And in the NBA, you see it a lot. Like at times, a guy will just take over. He'll just take over a game. And sometimes at the college level, you need a guy who's going to get you a bucket, somebody who can just step up, get you shots. Indiana didn't need that last night. If they would have just done what they were doing in the first half, they would have been in a better situation. But I thought, like you mentioned with Xavier Johnson, sometimes guys try to take over a game when they don't need to. If you just run your offense, get guys good shots, and get to the foul line. Now, I mean, obviously Indiana was 3 of 9, but you get to the foul line. A lot of times that's going to spell success. You don't have to do anything extraordinary. You just have to play basketball. And for whatever reason, Xavier Johnson tried to take over that game, and he didn't need to. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why you saw some of that downfall, because you just had almost too many cooks in the kitchen. Rather than what got them the 22-point lead, they went away from that, and obviously it was catastrophic. So it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back. I didn't think you had that in the Syracuse loss. Just Syracuse made some plays down the stretch. So this is really the first time we've seen it come back to bite them. But it's going to be interesting to see how you bounce back, especially when you go and you have to play a Notre Dame team on a neutral site.
Yeah, I wish we had the clip. I mean, I have it, but I can't cut it and put it in the show here because I would like to hear exactly what we didn't get the transcripts last night, so I don't know exactly what Xavier Johnson said. I wasn't able to listen to it because I was doing the show, but yeah, I mean, taking the blame for it is one thing, but you're in the Big Ten. You can't keep losing games that you have. Right. That you can win. And that was more than a winnable game. Brother, you got a 22 lead up on anybody, you better hold it. I don't care who you are, where you are, you better hold it. You've got to hold that. There's no excuse for losing a 22-point lead against anybody. And there's no excuse for Indiana doing it. I don't care where it was, that it was on the road. They should have won that game easily and just simply didn't. And a lot of it is that was mental toughness right there.
Yeah. Well, and it just goes to speak because we talk about mental toughness, but it's you see teams, usually really good teams, are able to withstand. Every team in college basketball is going to give you a run at some point at this level. Whether it's a 6-point run, a 10-point run, whatever it is, you have to be willing to withstand that. And when Wisconsin did that, you just saw it all kind of crumble down. Then that's when Indiana got into their own heads. And instead of playing to win, they were playing not to lose. And I think a lot of times under the Archie Miller era, that's what you saw. And there weren't a lot of answers other than the fact that they just didn't shoot well in the second half. But shooting is so mental. I don't think that this team gave up. I don't think that they didn't play hard. Like that's a credit to them. They continued to fight and battle. They just made some poor mistakes, and they got too much wrapped up in their head. They have to be able to withstand those runs that teams are going to make because it's going to happen every single game. And if you can't withstand a team's best effort, then you're going to lose a lot of games because this is a really good conference. Even though it's not as good as it was last year, this is still a really strong conference top to bottom.
A lot of people think that a lot of changes should have been made after half last night. Like I said, I think Woody was letting them – he didn't have the confidence in his second unit. I'll be honest with you. He didn't He was asked about bringing Lander in. He said that was not a discussion. Jennifer points out people are expecting the miraculous turnaround in less than a year. Expectations need to be more realistic. Archie did a lot of damage that can't be repaired overnight. There's truth to that too. You've got this same group that was under this mindset for however long that they were here under that, and now you're learning something. They're what, seven games in?
9 games.
Brother, you got it. This is a 30-something game season. So they're a third of the way in. It's going to take a minute, but when you see a first half like that, they got to put that second half on the other side of that. And if they do that, like I said, they could play with anybody in America. I mean, that was, man, that was bad. That was good looking stuff.
Well, that's the thing, right? If they play like they did in the first half, they can beat anybody in America. If they play like they did in that second half, they'll get beat by anybody in America.
Coach said he probably would have went with Finney. That's no answer. He didn't, no scoring there as well. So can't thank you guys enough today for joining us. Appreciate it for sticking through me producing the show while we're doing it. Lucky there. Big thanks to Dustin Schutte, of course, man, for making it, completing it. Cannot thank you enough, brother. Thank you so much. Big thanks to Kyle Neddenriep and Chris Denari as well. We'll be back tomorrow to do it again. Alec Lasley will join us. We'll have all the comments from the games and quotes and all of that. So until then, I hope you have a great day. Go out and have yourselves a great day. Without you guys, we don't have a reason to be here. We appreciate you most of all. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.